Three scary stories that happened during my night shift at a supermarket. I didn't expect anything strange about the job. It was just a night shift at a supermarket. Easy money, quiet hours, no customers, no stress, just restocking shelves and keeping an eye on things until morning. That's what the manager told me. The night is calm, he said. You'll like it. The store closed at 10 p.m. By 10:30, the lights were dimmed, the automatic doors were locked, and the place felt completely different. Not empty, just quieter than it should be. I walked through the aisles for the first time alone, the sound of my own footsteps echoing too clearly across the floor. Every shelf looked the same as during the day. Nothing out of place, nothing unusual. But without people, it didn't feel like a store anymore. More like a space waiting for something. The cameras were all on. I could see every aisle from the small security room in the back. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I sat down, watching the screens, telling myself I was overthinking it. Just another shift. Just another quiet night. But as the clock hit 11, one of the cameras flickered, just for a second. And when it came back, something in aisle 7 wasn't where it had been before. At first I thought it was just a glitch. The camera in aisle 7 flickered for less than a second. That's normal in a place like this. Old wiring, cheap equipment, nothing unusual. But something felt off. I leaned closer to the screen, trying to remember what I had seen before it flickered. The shelves looked the same. Boxes, cans, everything in place. But one thing, just one, felt wrong. A cart. There was a shopping cart in the middle of the aisle. I frowned. That didn't make sense. I had checked the store myself before closing. No carts left behind. Everything cleared, everything empty. I was sure of it. I stood up slowly, glancing at the other cameras. All empty. All normal. Only aisle 7. I grabbed the small flashlight, not because I needed it, but out of habit, and started walking toward it. Each step sounded louder than before. The store felt deeper now, longer. I reached aisle 7, stopped, looked down. No cart, nothing. Completely empty. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. Just the camera, I muttered. But as I turned to leave, I heard it. Behind me. A soft metallic sound, like wheels slowly turning. I turned slowly. Not fast, because something in me didn't want to see it moving. Aisle 7 was empty. Exactly like before. No cart. No movement. Nothing. I stood there for a few seconds, listening. The sound had stopped. No wheels. No dragging. Just silence again. I exhaled, forcing myself to relax. Old building, I said quietly. Echo. That had to be it. I took a step forward, then another. And that's when I heard it again, this time clearer. Right behind me. A slow roll, metal against tile. I froze. I didn't turn. I didn't breathe. Because now I knew. That wasn't an echo. It was moving. I could feel it. Close. Not touching. But close enough that I could tell exactly where it was. Right behind me. I swallowed slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. Just turn around. Just look. Nothing will be there. That's what I told myself. I turned. The aisle was still empty. No cart. No movement. Nothing. But something had changed. The shelves to my left One of the boxes had shifted just slightly, out of place, like something had brushed against it on the way past me. I went back to the security room, faster than I wanted to admit. The walk felt longer this time, like the aisles stretched just a little more than before. I kept glancing behind me, expecting to see something following. Nothing, just empty shelves. But it didn't feel empty anymore. I closed the door to the security room and sat down in front of the monitors, my eyes going straight to aisle 7. And that's when my chest tightened. The cart was there, clear, centered in the aisle, exactly where I had seen it before. I leaned closer to the screen. It wasn't flickering. It wasn't distorted. It was just there. Slowly, carefully, I reached for the mouse and rewound the footage. Aisle 7. Empty. Then me, walking in, standing there, looking around, alone, completely alone. No cart, nothing behind me. I swallowed hard, my eyes fixed on the screen as I watched myself turn to leave. And then something appeared, right behind me, not fully visible, just a shape, pushing something, the cart. And in that moment, something became impossible to ignore. The camera didn't glitch. It showed what I couldn't see. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, replaying the footage again and again. Every time, it was the same. Me walking into aisle 7 alone, and something appearing behind me only on camera. Not before, not after, only when I was there. My chest felt tight, but not from fear, from realization. This wasn't random. There was a pattern. I leaned back slowly, looking at the rest of the monitors. Every aisle was empty, perfectly still, too still. Then I remembered something the manager said earlier, not directly, not clearly, just a passing comment. Don't rely on the cameras too much. At the time, I thought he meant they were old, unreliable. But now, I wasn't so sure. Because if the cameras showed more than I could see, then maybe the problem wasn't trusting them. Maybe the problem was what happened when I looked away from them. I hesitated, then slowly stood up again. Because now I had a choice. Stay here, watch the screens, or go back out there, knowing something was behind me that only the cameras could see. I stayed in the security room. That felt safer. If the cameras could see it, then at least I had some kind of advantage. I kept my eyes on aisle 7. Nothing moved. The cart stayed there, perfectly still in the middle of the aisle. No distortion, no flicker, just waiting. Minutes passed, maybe 10, maybe more. I wasn't sure anymore. Then something changed, not in the aisle, on another screen. Aisle 4. I frowned and looked over. At first, everything seemed normal. Then I saw it. Me, standing in aisle 4, perfectly still, facing the shelves. My chest tightened instantly because I wasn't there. I was in the security room. I looked down at my hands, then back at the screen, still there, not moving, not reacting, just standing. I grabbed the mouse and rewound. The footage didn't change. There was no transition, no moment where I walked into frame. I was just there, already in place. I looked back at aisle 7. The cart was gone. Slowly, I returned my gaze to aisle 4, and the version of me on the screen tilted its head slightly, like it had just noticed I was watching it. I froze, staring at the screen, at myself. The version of me in aisle 4 didn't move again. I just stood there, still, facing the shelves. But now I knew it wasn't a recording. It was reacting to me. I didn't move, didn't blink, because I needed to be sure. Seconds passed. Nothing changed. Then I shifted slightly in my chair. Just a small movement, barely noticeable. And the moment I did, the version of me on the screen moved too, not the same way, not mirroring me. It stepped forward, one step, slow, deliberate. My chest tightened because I hadn't stood up. I hadn't gone anywhere, and yet something that looked exactly like me was moving through the store. I stayed completely still again. The figure stopped, immediately, holding position, waiting. I swallowed hard, my eyes locked on the screen as a realization settled in, clear and undeniable. It didn't move when I did. It moved when I stopped. And that meant if I stayed still long enough, it wouldn't just take one step. It would keep moving until it reached somewhere it wasn't supposed to be. I forced myself to move, just a little, shifted in my chair, adjusted my posture. Anything to keep it from moving again. The figure on the screen stopped immediately, frozen in place, exactly like before. My chest tightened as I tested it again. I moved my hand. It didn't mirror me. It didn't react. It just stayed still, waiting. I stopped, just for a second, and it moved again. Another step forward, closer to the end of the aisle. My breathing became uneven, because now I understood the pattern. It wasn't copying me. It was using my stillness. Every pause I made gave it permission to move. I stood up quickly. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. The figure stopped instantly, right at the edge of the aisle, close enough to step out, into the open area, into the main part of the store. I swallowed hard, my eyes fixed on the screen. Because if it left the aisle, it wouldn't be confined anymore. It wouldn't be limited. And in that moment, one thought became impossible to ignore. I couldn't stay still, not even for a second, because the moment I did, it would get closer, and eventually, it wouldn't be on the cameras anymore. I kept moving, small things, shifting my weight, tapping my fingers, adjusting my stance, anything to avoid staying still. The figure on the screen didn't move again. It stayed at the edge of aisle 4, waiting. But something else changed. Another monitor flickered. Aisle 2. I turned my head quickly, nothing at first. Then, a shape, not clear, not defined, just something darker than the rest of the aisle. Standing between the shelves, my chest tightened as I looked back at aisle 4. The figure was still there. Then aisle 2 again. The shape hadn't moved, but now I could see more of it. A height, a presence. Not me, not human. I swallowed hard, shifting slightly again just to make sure I didn't freeze. Then another screen flickered. Aisle 9. Now there were 2. No, 3. The figure that looked like me. The shape in aisle 2. And something else. Further back. Barely visible. I kept moving, faster now, more deliberately. Because the moment I slowed down, all 3 screens changed just slightly. closer. And in that moment, something became clear. It wasn't just one thing anymore, and they were all waiting for me to stop. I couldn't keep track of all the screens anymore. Every time I looked at one, another changed. Aisle 4, still me, standing at the edge, waiting. Aisle 2, the shape had moved closer to the front, more defined now, taller, wrong. Aisle 9, something between the shelves, not still anymore, not fully visible either, just shifting. I forced myself to keep moving, even when it didn't make sense, even when my legs felt tired, because now I understood. It wasn't about one thing. The store wasn't empty. It had never been empty. I had just been alone enough not to notice. My chest tightened as I stepped away from the monitors, pacing slowly across the room, my eyes jumping between screens. Then something changed again. The camera in aisle 4. The version of me was gone. The aisle was empty. Completely. I froze. Just for a second. And the moment I did, every screen flickered. All at once. And when they came back, they were closer. Not in the aisles. Not between the shelves. Closer to the front. Closer to me. And in that moment, something became impossible to ignore. They weren't staying in the store. They were moving toward the security room. I turned toward the door, slowly, like I already knew something would be there. The security room suddenly felt smaller than before. The monitors hummed behind me, filling the silence, but it didn't feel like protection anymore. It felt like warning. The door was closed, just like I left it, and no movement, no sound. But the air around it felt wrong, like something was standing right outside, waiting. I kept moving, small steps back and forth, not stopping, because now I understood. If I stopped, they would move, and if they reached the door, I didn't know what would happen. I glanced back at the screens. All the aisles were empty now, every single one. No shapes, no figures, nothing. My chest tightened, because that didn't mean they were gone. It meant they had left the aisles. I looked back at the door. The handle twitched, just slightly. I didn't touch it. I didn't go closer. I just kept moving, because something became painfully clear. They weren't on the cameras anymore, and that meant they were no longer somewhere I could see. They were somewhere closer. It started softly. 3 knocks. Even. Controlled. My entire body tensed instantly, because I hadn't stopped moving. I was still pacing, still shifting, still doing everything I could not to give it a moment. And yet, the knock came anyway, from the door, right in front of me. I froze for a split second, then forced myself to move again. Step, step, don't stop. The knocking didn't repeat immediately. It waited, like it was giving me time. Time to understand, time to react. I glanced at the monitors, still empty. Every aisle, nothing there. Only the door mattered now. Then, another knock, this time slower, more deliberate. My chest tightened as I stared at it, my body still moving without thinking, because something about the rhythm felt familiar. Too familiar. Aisle 7. The card. The pattern. I swallowed hard, because now I understood. It wasn't random. It was repeating something I had already seen. Something I had already reacted to. And in that moment, something became clear. The cameras didn't just show me things, they taught it how I respond. The knock stopped, not fading, not trailing off, just gone. For a moment, there was only the hum of the monitors and the sound of my own footsteps as I kept moving across the small room. Then, a click, sharp, mechanical, from above, the store speakers. My head snapped upward. They weren't supposed to be on at night. No announcements, no music, nothing. That's what the manager said. But now, they were active. A low static filled the store, then a voice, calm, flat, too clear. Attention. I froze for half a second, then forced myself to keep moving again. The voice continued. Employee in a store. My chest tightened, because I was the only one there. Please proceed to aisle 4. I shook my head immediately. No, I muttered under my breath, but the voice didn't stop. Employee in the store. A pause. Then, softer, closer, like it wasn't coming from the speakers anymore. It was coming from inside the room. Daniel. I stopped, just for a second. And the moment I did, the door handle moved. The handle didn't turn all the way, just enough to prove something was there. Testing, waiting. I forced myself to move again, faster now, pacing across the room, my breathing uneven as I tried to regain control. The speakers clicked again, static. Then the voice returned. Daniel. This time, closer, not echoing through the store, not distant, right above me, like it had moved into the room. My chest tightened instantly, because I hadn't told anyone my name, not the manager, not anyone. I had just started the job. There was no way it could know, unless it had learned it from the cameras, from the patterns, from me. Daniel, I said again, softer, calmer, like it didn't need a rush anymore. I know you're there. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself not to respond, not to look at the door, not to give it anything. Because now I understood something I hadn't before. It wasn't just watching. It was adapting. Every reaction I had, every movement, every hesitation, it was learning. And now, it knew exactly how to get my attention by becoming something I would recognize. I kept moving, even when my legs felt heavy, even when it didn't make sense anymore, because stopping wasn't an option. Not now. Not after everything I had seen. The voice went quiet again. For a moment, just the hum of the lights, the monitors, my footsteps. Then it spoke again. But this time, something was different. Daniel, stop. My chest tightened instantly, because the voice was mine. Not similar, not close, exact. Same tone, same pace, same way I spoke. I shook my head, pacing faster, refusing to even look toward the door. No, I said under my breath, but hearing my own voice say it from somewhere else made everything feel wrong. Daniel, you don't have to keep moving. My voice, calm, convincing, like I was talking to myself, like I believed it. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to keep going, because I knew the moment I listened, the moment I agreed, the moment I stopped, I wouldn't need the door anymore. And in that moment, something became clear. It wasn't trying to scare me. It was trying to replace the voice I trusted most. I didn't touch the monitors. I didn't go near them. But one by one, They turned on, every screen, at the same time. My chest tightened as I slowed for a fraction of a second, then forced myself to keep moving again. But it was too late. I had already looked, and what I saw wasn't the store anymore. Every camera showed the same place, the security room, from different angles, from corners where there were no cameras, from behind me, from above me, watching me. I swallowed hard, my eyes jumping from screen to screen. Every version of the room was slightly different. Not wrong, just delayed. Like I was watching myself from a second ago, then 2 seconds, then more. Each screen showing me, moving, pacing, trying not to stop. And then one screen didn't match. It showed me standing still in the middle of the room, not moving at all. My chest tightened because that wasn't happening. Not yet. I forced myself to move faster, but the screen didn't change. That version of me stayed frozen. And then, slowly, it turned its head toward the door. And in that moment, I understood something I couldn't ignore. One of those screens wasn't showing the past. It was showing what would happen when I stopped. I didn't stop. I couldn't. Not after seeing that. I kept moving. Faster now, my steps uneven, my breathing out of control. But still moving, the screens stayed on. Every version of me still pacing, except one. That one version, still standing still, still facing the door, waiting. Then, a sound. Not a knock, not the handle, the lock. A soft click. My chest tightened as I turned my head slightly, just enough to see it. The door, still in front of me, still closed, but the handle turned slowly by itself. I kept moving, didn't stop, didn't go closer, because now I knew. It didn't need me to open it. The door creaked, just slightly, then more, until a small gap appeared, darkness inside. Not like the rest of the store, deeper, heavier, wrong. I didn't look fully, didn't step closer, but I could feel it, clear now, closer than before. And then, on the screen, that version of me stepped forward into the door. And in that moment, something became undeniable. It wasn't trying to get in. It was waiting for me to match what I had already seen. I kept moving, even as the door opened wider, even as the darkness inside started to spread. Because now I understood. It wasn't about the door anymore. It was about alignment. The version of me on the screen had already stepped inside, and something, some part of me, was being pulled to follow it. The gap widened slowly, not forced, not rushed, like it was giving me time to choose, time to stop, time to match. I shook my head, pacing faster, my footsteps louder now, echoing against the walls. No, I said under my breath, but the pressure in the room didn't change. It grew, subtle, steady, like the space itself was adjusting around me. The monitors flickered, and for a moment, every screen showed the same thing. The open door, from inside, looking out. My chest tightened, because that meant whatever was behind the door was now looking into the room, watching me. Not through cameras, not through patterns, directly. And in that moment, something became clear. I wasn't trying to avoid going in. I was trying to avoid becoming the version of me that already had. I tried to stay away from the door, but the room didn't feel the same anymore. Every step I took, felt shorter, not in distance, in space, like the room itself was shrinking. My chest tightened as I kept pacing, my eyes flicking between the door and the screens, trying to track something that no longer followed any rules I understood. The door didn't move. I stayed open, waiting. But it felt closer now, even though I hadn't gone near it. I took another step, then another. And suddenly, I was only a few feet away. I stopped, just for a second. My heart jumped instantly, because I hadn't meant to stop. I forced myself to move again, but something had changed. The space behind me felt gone, like there was nothing there anymore. No room to retreat, only forward. I looked at the floor, then back at the door, and in that moment, the realization hit, sharp and immediate. I hadn't walked toward it. The distance had been removed until I was already there. I didn't remember getting that close. One moment, I was pacing. The next, I was standing right in front of the door, and close enough to feel the air coming from inside, heavy, still, wrong. I didn't look into it. I couldn't. Instead, my eyes shifted slightly to the small glass panel on the side of the security room, a reflection, faint, distorted, but enough to see myself, standing there, frozen, facing the door. My chest tightened, because that wasn't happening. I was still moving. I had to be. I forced myself to step sideways, and I did, but the reflection didn't. It stayed in place, still. Watching the door, I swallowed hard, my breathing uneven, as I looked back at it again. Slowly, very slowly, the reflection moved, not matching me, not delayed, independent. It stepped closer to the door, and then it raised its hand toward the darkness inside. And in that moment, something became impossible to ignore. The reflection wasn't copying me. It was showing what I was about to do if I stopped moving. I forced myself to move again. A step to the side, then another. Anything to break the pattern. But my eyes kept pulling back to the reflection, because now it was closer to the door than I was, and it wasn't hesitating. It raised its hand slowly, calm, controlled, like it already knew what would happen next. My chest tightened as I shook my head, pacing faster, trying not to look, but I couldn't stop, because the moment it moved, I felt it. Not in the reflection, in my own body, a slight tension in my arm, like something was aligning, like something was preparing. No, I whispered, forcing my hands down, clenching them into fists. But the reflection didn't stop, and it reached forward, fingers stretching toward the darkness, and at the same time, my hand twitched, just slightly, just enough. I froze for a second, and that was enough. The reflection touched the door first, and in that moment, I felt it too. Cold, immediate, real. And the realization hit. Quiet, but final. It didn't need me to act. It just needed me to pause long enough to become it. I pulled my hand back instantly, hard, like I had touched something burning. But the cold stayed, not on my skin, inside it. My chest tightened as I looked down at my hand. It hadn't moved forward, not really. Not enough to touch anything. And yet, I had felt it. Clear, immediate, like something had reached through and met me halfway. I forced myself to step back. One step, then another. But But the feeling didn't fade. It followed, stayed, like the contact hadn't ended. I looked back at the reflection. It was still there, still standing near the door. But now, its hand was already inside, not fully, just past the threshold, into the darkness. And it didn't pull back. It didn't react. It just held that position, like it belonged there. My breathing became uneven as I stared at it, trying to understand how that was possible. Then, slowly, the reflection turned its head toward me. And in that moment, something became impossible to ignore. It wasn't showing what I would do. It was showing what had already started happening without me realizing it. The speakers didn't turn on this time. No static, no click, nothing. The voice came from the door, from inside the darkness, clear, close, like it was standing just beyond the threshold. Daniel. My chest tightened instantly, because it didn't sound like me anymore. It didn't sound like the store system. It sounded real, present, like it had moved from the speaker to the room, to the door, following me, adapting. Daniel, you can stop now. I shook my head immediately, stepping sideways again, forcing myself to keep moving. No, I whispered, but my voice sounded weak, uncertain, and it knew that. You don't have to keep moving, it said again. Calm, patient, like it wasn't trying to convince me, like it was waiting for me to realize something. My chest tightened as I looked at the reflection again. The version of me by the door had stopped moving, completely still, hand inside the darkness, not resisting, not hesitating, accepting. And in that moment, something became clear. It wasn't trying to pull me in anymore. It was trying to show me that stopping was the same thing as stepping forward. I kept moving, even when my legs felt weak, even when my breathing didn't match my steps anymore. Because stopping meant something now, something I couldn't undo. The voice didn't speak again, but the door stayed open. The reflection stayed near it. Everything paused, and then the sound disappeared, not faded, not slowly, all at once. The hum of the monitors, gone. The faint buzz of the lights, gone. Even my footsteps, silent. I looked down. My feet were still moving, but I couldn't hear them. My chest tightened, because that meant I wasn't hearing anything anymore. Not the room, not the store, nothing. I looked back at the screens. They were still on, still showing the room. But there was no sound, no delay, no difference, just visuals. Like I was watching something, instead of being inside it. I slowed down, just slightly, just enough to test it. And the moment I did, everything froze. Every screen, every reflection, every shadow stopped, waiting. And in that moment, the realization hit. It wasn't trying to control the space. It was waiting for me to stop moving inside it. I didn't mean to stop. It just happened. 1 second I was moving. The next, I wasn't. Completely still. No steps, no shifting, nothing. And the moment I did, everything changed. The silence broke, not with sound, with presence. The air tightened instantly, like something had snapped into place. The screens flickered, not randomly, and all at once. Every version of the room aligned, every angle the same, and in every screen, I was standing still, facing the door. My chest tightened because I wasn't looking at the screens anymore. I was looking at the door, directly, without thinking, without choosing, like something had already made the decision for me. The reflection gone. No delay, no separate version, just me, exactly where it had been, exactly how it had stood. The gap in the door widened slightly. The darkness inside felt closer, heavier, waiting. And in that moment, something became undeniable. I hadn't stopped by accident. I had reached the point where stopping was the final step. I didn't move, not because I was resisting, but because I couldn't. My body felt aligned, like every movement I could have made had already been decided. The door stood open in front of me, wider now, not forced, not pushed, just ready. The darkness inside didn't look empty anymore. It had depth, structure, like there was something just beyond what I could see, waiting for me to complete it. My chest tightened as I tried to step back. Nothing happened. I tried again. Still nothing. Because there was no space behind me anymore. No distance. No room to retreat. Only forward. But then, without thinking, my foot moved. Just one step. Small. Controlled. Not mine. I didn't decide it. I didn't choose it. But it happened anyway. Closer to the door. Closer to the threshold. And the moment it did, the air shifted again. Not around me. Through me. Like something had just confirmed that I was no longer resisting. And in that moment, something became clear. This wasn't about pulling me in. It was about removing every part of me that could choose not to go in. I crossed the threshold, not fully aware of doing it. One moment, I was in the room. The next, I wasn't. The security room vanished. No walls, no monitors, no door behind me. Just darkness, but not empty. It felt structured, like space existed here, just not in a way I could understand. My breathing sounded different, too loud, too close, echoing in a place that didn't seem to have walls. I tried to turn. There was no direction. I tried to step back. There was no distance, only forward, without knowing where forward was. Then a sound. Not a voice this time, not clear. More like something forming right next to me. Not touching, but present. Close enough that I could feel it. And then, very softly, it spoke. Not in my voice. Not in the store's voice. Something else. You stayed. My chest tightened. Because that wasn't a question. It wasn't even a statement. It was confirmation. Like everything that had happened, every movement, every pause had led to this exact moment. And in that moment, I understood something I couldn't deny. I hadn't walked into the dark. I had reached the place that had been waiting for me the entire time. I don't know how long I was there. Time didn't feel the same. There were no sounds to measure it, no movement to track it, just a presence. Then, suddenly, I was back, standing in the security room, exactly where I had been before. The door closed, no gap, no darkness, nothing. The monitors were on. The hum of the lights returned. Everything looked normal. My chest rose sharply as I stepped back, trying to understand what just happened. I looked at my hands, and then around the room. Nothing had changed. Nothing out of place. Like it had never happened. I stumbled toward the monitors, Every aisle empty, perfectly still. No figures, no movement, no sign that anything had been there at all. I exhaled slowly, trying to calm down, trying to convince myself it was over, that it was done. Then one of the cameras flickered, aisle 7, and when it came back, someone was standing there, perfectly still, facing the camera. And in that moment, something became clear. The store was still the same, but I wasn't. I leaned closer to the screen, slowly, carefully, because something about the way it stood felt familiar, too familiar. The figure in aisle 7 didn't move, didn't react, just stood there, facing the camera, exactly how I had been standing earlier. My chest tightened as I stared at it, trying to make out details. Clothes, posture, height, everything matched. I swallowed hard. No, I whispered, but I already knew. It was me. Not a reflection, not a delay, not another version. Just me, standing in aisle 7, perfectly still. I stepped back from the monitor, my breathing uneven as I looked around the room, then back at the screen. Still there, not moving, waiting. I shifted slightly. Nothing changed. I took a step. Nothing. The version of me on the camera didn't react, didn't follow, didn't mirror. It just stood there, like it wasn't connected to me anymore. And then, slowly, it raised its head, looking directly into the camera, and in that moment, something became impossible to ignore. It wasn't me anymore, and it wasn't trapped in the aisles. It was waiting for the next time someone walked in alone. I finished my shift. At least, that's what it looked like. The clock hit morning. The lights came back on. Customers started coming in. Everything normal again. Too normal. I didn't say anything to the manager. I didn't ask questions. Didn't mention aisle 7, or the door, or the voice, because I already knew. He wouldn't be surprised. I walked out of the store, the sunlight hitting my eyes, everything feeling real again, safe, like nothing had happened. But that feeling didn't last, because later that night, I checked the cameras, not from work, from my phone, the store app. I shouldn't have opened it. I know that now. Aisle 7, still, empty. Then, the image shifted, and there I was, standing in the aisle, facing the camera, perfectly still, exactly like before. I dropped the phone, my chest tightening, because I wasn't in the store anymore. I was at home, alone, and in that moment, something became clear, cold and final. I had left the store, but something that looked like me never did, and it's still there, working the night shift, waiting for someone else to replace it.